Hello, I am on a filming roll, so we're going to keep going. It's a new week for you, but it's like 2 minutes later for me. So, last week I made a video discussing why fast fashion absolutely sucks and why you should stop buying it. And I hope that you're here because you watched that video and you were compelled, and now you want to know how you should be buying your clothes. So today we are going to talk about the other possible ways of buying your clothes, and we're going to break them down. So we're going to talk about high-end high street fashion, buying new clothes from sustainable brands, and buying secondhand clothes. And I'm going to talk you through the different pros and cons for each of those and help you decide which one you should be doing. First of all, let's talk about high-end high street fashion. So when I say this, I mean the whole spectrum. We're talking anywhere from like Jack Wills, Superdry to like Gucci, Prada, Chanel, because I think the thing is they all have the same USP, which is that their clothes are more valuable and their clothes are more desirable. You know, Primark aren't trying to sell you really desirable clothes. They've decided that their unique selling point is that their clothes are really cheap and really affordable and really on trend. Whereas if you go to these other brands, their clothes, you know, might have their own style to them, cost more, and people will see you wearing them and know that you spent more money on your clothes. You know, so when I say high-end fast fashion, I'm talking about the whole spectrum because they all have the same values, in my opinion. I haven't actually asked them, but I just imagine they all have pretty similar values. So the one good thing that I do have to say is really great about high-end fast fashion is that it costs more. Now, you might have watched my video last week and saw me talking about the true cost of clothing, and you're wondering, is this because they pay more of the true cost? And different brands are doing different things. Some pay their workers better, I'm sure. Some are doing things to save the environment, I'm sure. But in general, it doesn't seem to be this good thing, you know? Jack Will's selling point isn't that they give loads of money to rebuilding the environment and to, you know, really developing the career prospects of their garment makers. I've never seen that being advertised in their store, so I'd say they're probably not paying the true cost. So why is it beneficial then that their clothes are costing more money? Is that money not just going straight to the people in the Western world who work in the big offices and to the people who own these companies and the shareholders? Yes, that is where the money is going. But the reason that it's good is because it encourages people to look after their clothes better and to wear them for longer. And that is sustainable. And when people do want to get rid of them, they're likely to resell them or give them to charity because you're not just going to throw away this expensive dress that you bought. You'll think, oh, I can sell this and make some money. So even then it doesn't go to landfill. And this is also a good thing because it creates this market for secondhand clothing, which we'll talk about in a sec. In many cases, this also encourages to buy less pieces overall. If you're the kind of person that wants to like invest in fashion, you might buy yourself some really nice pieces of clothing. But I think the issue here is that we get really swept up into fast fashion and you think, oh, you think when I earn more money, I'm gonna like really invest in some really expensive piece of clothing. But quite often people just get caught up in this buying habit and they end up buying loads. So I think the argument that high-end clothes are more expensive and therefore encourages to buy less is kind of void because people will just go for whatever price point suits them and they'll still buy loads. But the idea that makes us like look after our clothes, I think is really important. But as you've probably guessed, the main issues with high-end high street fashion are the exact same issue with low-end high street fashion. The workers are not getting paid enough, the resources being used, the amount of products being churned out. It's just all generally bad news all around. And if we go back to the point of thinking about the mental health of the buyer, it might even be worse because they feel like they need to spend loads of money to compete with their friends by having the more expensive clothes. The second thing that a lot of people are starting to do these days is to buy clothes from sustainable brands. So this is things like Organic Basics, Rapa Nui, Tala, who are making clothes with the environment in mind. If you do choose to support these companies, please do some research into them and see what they're doing. There's a real issue in 2020 with greenwashing where companies will like highlight one good thing that they're doing, and so you think, oh, they're doing this, they must be this wonderful brand. It turns out everything else they're doing is awful. They're just using recycled materials, but they're still an awful company, you know? So make sure you do some research. We've seen a rise in these brands because people are starting to care about the environment, and so people want to buy environmentally sustainable clothes. But fashion has always been a thing and people don't want to stop buying fashion, so they suddenly Google like sustainable brands, and now there's this market for sustainable brands and more brands are popping up. So first of all, let's talk about the positives. Obviously, whatever they claim to be doing, you should assume they are doing. They are doing wonderful things for the environment, and ethically their clothes are probably coming from much better sources. I really love brands that make things from recycled materials. I think that's even better. It's one thing to make them from like organic cotton, but it's another thing to take some waste that already exists in the world that's taking up space and turn it into something good, I think that's even better, if you want my opinion. And it's also worth noting that a lot of these companies do charge more. Organic Basics is a great example where you look at their clothes and think, oh my god, these are so expensive. But that's because they are paying the true cost, you know, or at least I believe they are. I think it's good that they're charging more money for their clothes because they're helping to build a better expectation of what clothes should actually cost in the 21st century. The other good thing about their prices being high is that they don't have to make as many sales, so therefore they don't have to make as many clothes. With sustainability, one of the main issues is the resources it takes to make clothes, and so we need clothing brands that can survive by selling less clothes, and they do this by selling them for more money. I think we need to create a market where a brand can survive and grow for a smaller number of sales. That would be really nice. As a minimalist, that sounds really appealing to me. A lot of these brands are still asking us to make regular purchases, so especially the companies where they're offering it to you for a much cheaper amount, they still want you to go there every season and buy new clothes from them, and that in itself is unsustainable because of the amount of resources it takes. You can't claim to be a sustainable brand when you're still like pushing sales and asking people to come back and buy more. I think it's a much more sustainable business model when you're like helping people repair their clothes or charging for repairs. Hardwired in our brains as we are to look for a bargain, we need to like get out our screwdrivers and like fix that wiring in our brain. We need to change, you know, the way we think, and we want to support companies that charge lots of money and that offer repairs and who you can send your clothes back to. We don't want to support companies who claim to be sustainable because they're making stuff from organic materials or recycled materials but are still just pumping out all the clothes they can. So the last option that we need to talk about is secondhand clothing. And as you've probably guessed from my charity shop haul, secondhand shopping is my preferred way to buy clothing. So let's talk about why. Like I said in my previous video, 11 million items of clothing are sent to landfill by the UK every week. Like, that's madness. And I have this theory that there are enough clothes on the planet today to clothe us all, even for like the next like 10 years, you know, taking into account things are going to break, things are going to wear, you need stuff for different occasions. I reckon we've got enough for the next like 10 years or so. So secondhand clothing from a sustainable point of view is the best option because we already have enough clothes. Why are we, you know, using all these resources? Why are we using this water and this energy to make more clothes when we already have enough? So from a sustainability point of view, if you're truly thinking about the environment, it's kind of better to buy clothes from secondhand than it is to buy from a sustainable brand. So do I have any issues with secondhand clothing? The main issue that I see is that secondhand clothing is often really cheap, which, as you can see from what I've been saying in this video, is actually kind of a bad thing. And I especially get really annoyed. I used to work in a charity shop for a bit, and I got really annoyed when people would like come in and think the clothes were too expensive. They'd see a dress and the dress was like £8, but it would be like a monsoon dress for £8, and they'd think that was too expensive and not buy it. And I just hate that we have this image that secondhand clothing has to be really cheap, and everyone thinks that just because someone owned it before me, you know, therefore its price has rapidly decreased. Yeah, and I don't think that's an issue on the like shop's point of view. I think it's like a societal thing that we need to work around. It makes it harder to build up a bigger secondhand market. Like, I would love for there to be more secondhand shops. I would love to walk through my high street and see secondhand shops that aren't like charity shops tucked around the back streets, you know? I'd love for like one of the big shops in the main shopping centre to be a secondhand shop, but that can't happen at the moment because everyone thinks that secondhand clothing should be really cheap. For me, when I think about an item of clothing, especially if it's in amazing condition, then why should that be any cheaper than buying it first hand just because someone else has worn it? We're never going to live in a truly sustainable world where we can just like keep using the materials we already have if we think that they lose money over time. But this isn't all bad news. I do think that is slowly happening. So firstly, with the rise of like Depop, I buy a lot of my clothes on Depop, and this is where people sell their own clothes. It's like eBay, but just for clothes. And a lot of those clothes are still like, you still have to pay more for them than you would in, say, a charity shop, you know? You buy them for maybe like £7, £8, £10, £12, £15, depending what there is. I've also bought, like, I bought a coat off Depop for like £40, but it was like £80 brand new, but I still was willing to pay like £40 for this coat secondhand because it's a really nice coat, whereas I don't think you would ever see a coat for sale in a charity shop for £40. but or Depop, I paid £40 for it, and I think that's a really great thing. So I do think that market is slowly emerging, and vintage stores are the other way that this is happening, where sometimes in vintage shops, an item of clothing is worth more because it's seen as like old and retro and cool, and that's a good thing because an item's price should be based on its desirability and its value and how much wear you're going to get out of it and how good quality the materials are and like what good a condition it's in. That's what it should be based on. The price of an item should not be based on its age and how many previous owners it's had and who made it. Okay, so those are the 3 ways that you can buy clothes. And as you can see, I think that buying secondhand is the best way to buy clothes. But before you go, there's one more sort of option that we have to talk about. And that is just stop buying clothes. It's good for your mental health. Like, you're no longer thinking, oh, I need to go out and buy this purchase to make me happy. It's good for the environment. You're not using up resources. You know, we just need to slow down this market as much as possible. And I also think that as a society, we need to learn to repair clothes. I'm trying to get a lot better at this. For example, the most common one is that like jeans get ripped, especially like between the legs. And I'm learning how to repair that when that happens. Even if it only repairs my jeans for like another year or 2, that's huge. And we definitely need to be learning how to repair our clothes. And I also think people shouldn't be afraid to use tailors. I've used a tailor a couple of times now. Normally when a zip breaks, for some reason replacing a zip absolutely terrifies me. The point is that you don't have to be an amazing seamstress to repair your clothes. You can pay someone else to do it. And yes, that is kind of expensive, but you know what? It's the true cost. And then with expensive items, that makes sense because, for example, I got my rucksack fixed, and my rucksack was like a nice rucksack, and I still had to pay like £30 to have the zips repaired, but I wouldn't have been able to replace that rucksack for £30 and to buy a like-for-like one. So there it makes sense. But sometimes it's difficult when you've bought something fast fashion or secondhand and you paid, like for example, I paid £8 for this Jack Wolfskin jacket that I have. I bought it at a kilo sale, and it's just like a lightweight, waterproof jacket. And then within like a year, maybe like 6 months, the main zip had broken and the other side pocket zip had broken. So I took it to a tailor's and I paid £30 to have it repaired. But this jacket still would have cost me more than £38 to buy it brand new. And why am I afraid of paying £30 to have my jacket repaired? Like, we just need to move away from this notion that we shouldn't spend more money repairing an item than we did in the first place. Like, if that item, you know, for me with that jacket, I really love that jacket and I want to keep wearing it, and that's worth £30 in my head. It doesn't matter how much I paid for it in the first place. What matters is how much joy I get out of it and how much joy I'm going to get out of it if I get it repaired. And that is what was worth £30 for me, and that's why I spent £30 having it repaired. So I feel like I need to end this video by talking about like my personal beliefs and plans. Will I keep buying clothes is basically the question. I feel like I should answer that. So for the last year or so, I have bought all of my clothes secondhand, like 95% of them. But lately, I've been thinking a lot more about minimalism, just from a personal point of view and like the personal benefits of it. There's this idea of just a no-buy challenge where you just stop buying things. There's a YouTube channel called The Personal Philosophy Project, and Shinzia, who has that channel, she just doesn't buy anything anymore. And when I first heard about that, that was wild to me. I was like, how can you not buy anything? But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, she's really onto something. And so I just want to stop buying stuff because it's bad for the environment, but also it's just bad for my mental health and it's bad for my wallet. Like, I could be saving this money to invest in education or in housing or in experiences, which I wrote a blog post about why you should always spend your money on experiences instead of material things. So I'm really slowing down my buying. I will probably still buy a couple of items every season, and I'll try and buy those secondhand. I don't think that's going to stop, but I'm really trying to like buy like 1 or 2 items each season to slowly like change my wardrobe into what I want it to be instead of just buying loads and loads of items. And I'm learning to repair my clothes. That's really exciting. I think I will use sustainable brands for things like underwear and socks, and maybe for gym clothes where those things like do get a bit smelly and gross if you buy them secondhand. So I'll probably use sustainable brands there. But even then, like, I don't need new underwear. I have enough for now. So until those break and then I need to buy more, and then I'll go buy some from sustainable brand, like but until then, I don't need to buy any more now. You know, there's no point me going and rushing to buy clothes from Organic Basics because they're sustainable. It's not sustainable for me to buy clothes that I don't need. The best option for the planet, for people, for your mental health, to not buy clothes. But if you do feel the need to buy clothes, which I still do, I'm not a perfect human being, those are your options, and I hope that helps. Thank you for watching. My name is Louise, and you can find me on Instagram and YouTube at Louise's Life.